Welcome, everyone. And thank you all for being with us today. I'm so excited. Our wonderful guests today, they're all rock stars in our industry. But in celebration of Black History Month, this E3 presentation will focus on the achievements of African Americans in the venue industry. So with that, the foundation thanks you for your time, and we'll turn it over to Robyn to kick it off. Thank you, Robyn.
Thanks, Gina.
Hey, Gina.
Yes.
Do you know why Black History Month is in February?
I should know that. Tell me.
Because it's too cold to have a parade.
Absolutely.
And with that note, we're off and running. So, welcome everybody that's here to watch this amazing panel that this particular E3 was put together by IAVM's Diversity and Inclusive Leadership Committee, which I'm a proud member of, and I am thrilled. Clearly, I'm not Amy Fitzpatrick, as it says here. Amy is without power and internet at her house, and so I had to sign in as the host in order to do this. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, we're so lucky to have like the cream of the crop of leadership for IAVM on this panel. It was so interesting as I've known these folks most of my career, and in talking to them, we all joined IAVM about the same time. You know, Jimmy and Carol and I started out in the same region, and I've known Sporty from my time in Charlotte and through his teaching, and Mina and I were on certification board forever. And so it's just a great pleasure. And I'm going to just briefly introduce everybody to you. And as I say your name, if you'll just wave, I think, because right now Carol's Robyn. This is awesome. I've always wanted to be Carol.
Oh, am I Robyn?
And now I really am. So it's very cool.
I'm not sure what's going on there, but I will definitely.
Yes. Hey.
Oh, you know what? You forwarded your.
I forwarded you the link. I bet that's
the link to me.
Okay. Well, while she's like trying to not be me, not that I'm going to take that personally. So first, I'll introduce Carol Wallace Cve.
No.
Carol is the president and CEO for the San Diego Theaters, Inc. So she manages the San Diego Civic Theater and the historic Balboa Theater. And she has a very long career history in running venues from Dallas, Colorado, San Diego Convention Center. We're really happy to have her back on the performing arts side of things. She's been a member of IAVM since 1985, and she is a past president of the association. She was the fourth woman to serve in more than 60 years of our association, and that's very significant. She's also currently the first and only Black woman to serve as a president of our association. We're going to see a second one come through in a couple more years, which we're really thrilled about, but yeah. Carol's certainly a groundbreaker. She's also a 2004 Charles A. McElravy Award winner, which is our IAVM's highest award for exceptional leadership and career-long accomplishment. So she's the bomb. So you've got such great experience here.
Thank you.
I next want to introduce Mina Boyd, CVE. Mina is currently retired from the Roanoke Civic Facilities Department, where she was the executive director. And there she oversaw the Civic Center Coliseum, the Performing Arts Center Theater, and Special Events Center. Again, someone who has, many years of experience in venue management. She's been a member of IAVM since 1985, and everybody's career started before they were members of IAVM. So they've been in the business a long time. She's a past chair of the IAVM's foundation. And in 2020, last year, she was awarded the foundation's Legacy Award, which recognizes significant financial and non-financial contributions towards the foundation's mission, which is to help promote advancement of the public assembly industry. And she is the first woman and the first person of color to receive the Legacy Award in its 13-year history. So she, again, is a glass ceiling breaker and a role model for so many of us. Next, let me introduce Jimmy Earl Cve. Jimmy's currently retired as the director of the Frank Erwin Center at the University of Texas in Austin. And he's currently principal of Earl and Associates Consultants, because, you know, none of us ever really forever go away. Again, Jimmy's had a very long history on the arena side of things. He's been a member of IAVM since 1987. He is also a past president of IAVM, and he was the first Black male to be president of our association. Carol beat him as the first Black person as president, but about 2 or 3 years later, here came Jimmy. He is also a 216 Charles A. McElravy Award winner as well. So an incredible person here. And last and certainly not least is Sporty Gerald Cve. Sporty is currently the Assistant Dean for Diversity and Inclusion, and he's the senior instructor at the College of Hospitality, Retail, and Sports Management at the University of South Carolina. I think his business card must be like an 8.5-11 piece of paper, because that is one long title. He also serves in community relations with the Charlotte Hornets. Sporty has had a very long history of managing arenas and has been a very important part of our association. He's written books that have influenced venue managers all throughout the association, and was also involved in the IAVM textbook. He has been an IAVM member since 1984. And in 2007, he received an IAVM presidential citation, which are very special citations given by the president or chair during their year of people who really made a difference in our industry. He is also the 2019 Teacher of the Year for the College of Hospitality, Retail, and Sport Management at the University of South Carolina. So no small accomplishment there. So as you can see, this is the most amazing group of people. So we're going to kind of get them started talking with some stories. There will also be opportunities for you all to ask questions. So you can put questions maybe in the Q&A, and I'll try and kind of monitor that. And the diversity committee has also sent some questions along as well. So we'll get a spattering of both. But the purpose of the panel today was to really talk about what it was like to be Black in our industry, and also as an IAVM member. And I'm going to have to preface this, and in fact, I'm gonna actually ask Jimmy Earl to start off, because part of the reason we're here, and partly why there's a reason for the Diversity and Inclusive Leadership Committee, was a conversation that Jimmy and I had in the Minneapolis airport a number of years ago. Do you remember that, Jimmy? You want to talk a little bit about our conversation?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you, Robyn, and the foundation, and all the panelists for being here today. I'm certainly honored to be here to participate with such an esteemed group. I really am. I believe that our conversation took place at a lounge in an airport. I think that's right. And
Yeah.
in Minneapolis, and we were just kind of chatting about, our experiences in the industry and what had happened and how we got to where we were. And I shared with you, some of the things from my early membership in IAVM. And and many in this panel will know what I'm saying, because they too have participated. That in some of the earlier years, there were so few people that looked like us that, naturally, I think we were kind of drawn to each other. And from a kind of a shared experience in life and culture and our just the way that society was at that time. We had what was known as the sorry about that. Um, uh, the group. And what we would do is we would get together at whatever city we were in, and some people that had the wherewithal, like Carol and others, to had those big expense accounts. We'd have a hotel suite or somewhere we could meet and just talk about issues that were of concern to us that maybe weren't being addressed by the association, or just things that we felt that we needed to discuss and talk about. It was also an opportunity for us to network and uh, talk about um, other opportunities or what was going on, in the job wise in the industry. So it was things like that, and very rudimentary in the beginning, and I'm sure some others can share about that. But my conversation with you was, I think you were surprised that something like that existed, and or the need for that uh, was there. So. I think, to the best of my knowledge, that's kind of what we talked about. But suffice to say, I think it led ultimately to where we are now. With this group and the diversity group in the association.
My world was so white, and so I'm thinking everything's just a picnic for all members. And when Jimmy was telling me the story, I was so appalled, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And then we both also started like, well, and look, yeah, we've made some headway, but if you look at the leadership roles in our association, it was still predominantly white. Well, predominantly white men. Women were making more headway, but people of color really weren't making the headway that we wanted. And Jimmy and I ended up on a leadership committee that was to help pick the next chair for IAVM. And we were just like, we can't keep doing the same stuff we've always been doing, because it's just nothing's going to change. And so that committee was chaired by Karen Totaro. She created a subcommittee with Jimmy, myself, and Michael Marion to come up with, how do we change this? And really out of that became birthed the idea of the Diversity Inclusive Leadership Committee. And if any of you have been paying attention, that committee has been blowing things away. The conversations we've been able to have openly and deeply about racism, the intentionality that is being taken to put people on committees and chairs and hear more diverse voices. It's been a really huge part of the committee. And all the people that you see before you today helped contribute that. We literally built this on their shoulders. Mina, I'm going to ask you to kind of also talk about, like, as a person of color, what did it take for you to like get in the industry and advance yourself into big, meaty, be in charge roles?
Well, the biggest thing was to be willing to go the extra mile. And unfortunately, that's what we had to do in a lot of instances. And there were people who would chastise me for doing more and saying, why are you doing that? You're not getting paid for it. But by being willing to learn more about the industry, what the other jobs were within the convention center or the performing arts center, just being able to learn more about it, and just having those extra things that unfortunately, others didn't have to do, but being willing to go the extra mile. So it actually benefited me to be able to do that and know more. And so the more I could know, it was to my advantage. And then I could also share that with others, the things that I had learned on my own.
You told me a story that really struck me about a former boss who, you were really trying to advance, and he just thought it was, quote unquote, too much job for you. And kind of how he made an attempt to try and block you from advancing into a job. Can you share some of that story with everyone?
Yeah, that was an opportunity in San Antonio, and I got along really well with my boss. But when the job opened up, I applied for it, and he said that he would never hire a woman. And he didn't say he wouldn't hire an African American, but that was also implied that he wouldn't hire me for that because it was too much for me. I couldn't handle it. I didn't have the fortitude to be able to do that. And so as a result, he decided for the first time ever that there would be an exam. So he got with HR, and HR then developed this exam for it. And I actually got the last laugh because out of all of the men, I was the only female to take that exam. And I was the only person of color to take it. And I was the only one to pass the exam. And so he had to call me. I had taken the day off because I was so upset about it. Not upset, I was just angry. And so the day that the decision was going to be made, I took the day off. And he called me and he said, I'm calling you to tell you I have to give you the job. And, and he was still kind to me, but he just didn't think I could do it. And actually, that was great for me, but I was still angry about it, the way that he had told me, I have to tell you that you got the job. So, but afterwards, he was still kind to me, which was, it's so strange when people don't know you or don't know what you're capable of, and yet they make a decision based on what you look like.
Mina earlier today sent me a link to a TEDx talk that I'll put the information in the chat, but it's called How Can You Hate Me When You Don't Know Me? And I would say, that was part of, Mina's experience early on, just having to work harder and, prove herself more than people who didn't look like her. And I think that was a really good story for me to hear. Sporty's story, as he was getting into the industry, was a little bit different, but equally fascinating to me. Sporty, could you talk about that?
Yeah, and thank you, Robyn, for moderating our panel today. And you've been in the business a long time. I thought I was coming to a Black History program, and come to find out I'm part of the program. So that's not good, I don't think. We've been in the business a long time. We probably got 150 years between the four of us in this industry. But thank you so much for what you're doing and your willingness to be at the forefront of this initiative that is so important. But I told Robyn yesterday as we chatted that I had a guy, Andy Greenwell, and I bring a little bit different perspective to this discussion because I've been very fortunate in my career that I have had two people who really, we hear don't see color. We know that that's not really true. Everybody, I think, sees color, and I'm learning that more and more in my role as an assistant dean for diversity and inclusion at our university. But Andy Greenwell was a 50-year-old white guy. I was a 24-year-old Black kid, and I did an internship at the Hampton Coliseum. At the end of those 3 months, I went to Andy and I said, is there any way I can keep working here? I love this stuff. And he actually created a position for me. Mike Abington, who some of you will remember, had just left the Hampton Coliseum. Frank Roach is also a former assistant director at the Hampton Coliseum. Mike had just gone to the Pontiac Silverdome. And so it was about April when he left. I started my internship in May. Andy really didn't have a urgency in filling that position. And so he let me do my internship. And then like October, he actually created a position for me. And it was a little play on words. It was the assistant to the director. He just froze that assistant director's position that Mike had occupied, made me the assistant to the director because I didn't have any experience. I had no experience whatsoever. All I'd ever done was be a lifeguard. And so he created that position for me, and in 2 years, he promoted me to assistant director and kind of froze the position I held. For all intents and purposes, I was the assistant manager of the building from that first day, though, and he let me screw up and, you know, just hung in there with me. But he saw something in me that he felt like I could be a manager. And I try to see that in young people as well. And you guys know for me, mentoring is something that I have tried to do in my career. And I'm privileged to say that I've hopefully mentored a lot of industry professionals who've made me look really, really good. All of them are a lot smarter than me. Trust me on that. But it has been something, and all of us have our roles. You know, Carol and Jimmy, they were willing to take that mantle of leadership. And I know that was not easy. I never wanted to be president of IAVM. And so I think we all have to kind of find our place in this industry and try to be effective, you know, where we can be effective. But I do want to, and Robyn, you said we had a little leeway, but I want to just kind of go back to what Jimmy was talking about in the group, so to speak. And I see Victor Cohen is on today with us, and shout out to Victor. Victor and I are kind of contemporaries in this industry. And Victor and I, as I remembered at least, Victor might have a different recollection, but in 1984, I think we were in Montreal. That was where the International Convention was at. And Victor and I were in one of those hotel rooms where we had, I think, 20 of us in the hotel room. And I can remember chatting with Victor and saying, man, this is great. We're young. We're 24, 25 years old. We're on the forefront of something that is going to be, you know, amazing. I had visions that there'd be 100 people in that hotel room, you know, in 20 years. And I shared with you yesterday, 20 years later, I think I actually wrote an article that, you know, there were 20 people in the room again. So you guys have done an amazing job here lately, I think, you know, bringing more people into our industry, and that's very, very important. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Sporty.
And
Caroline,
Robyn,
go ahead.
if I may say something, the other three that are on this panel, they might not remember the things that they have said to me that have helped so much. And, you know, each one has given advice and encouragement. And I think that's what helped us a lot in the industry too. You know, I went through a very sad time, and Sporty never let me feel down about it. You know, he was so encouraging. There was another time where I don't even remember what the incident was, but then Jimmy had given me some advice, and it just meant so much. And then Carol was the one who pushed me, because I would not have done a lot of things if she hadn't said, you can do this, and I'm going to recommend that you be a part of this. And Sporty did the same thing, like with the certification committee. And so I think that we've all been able to bond and help each other with, you know, and they didn't ask for any recognition for that at all. But I think it's important that I give them credit for it.
I think that's why it's so important that we see ourselves in the industry and in our association, so that we can all help and mentor each other. Carol, I probably know you the best, maybe because I've made a practice of really paying attention to you, because I always loved how you would just always speak up, and you were no wallflower. And I've had the ability to hear some of your stories, and so yeah, talk about some of those stories.
Well, you know, thank you, Robyn. I want to commend you and first commend Jimmy, because Jimmy has provided long-standing leadership supporting people of color in IAVM. And that group he talks about that got together, I will tell you, and it's great to see IAVM finally bring diversity and inclusion out of the closet, because I will tell you, when we had those meetings, we were talked to about those meetings. There was suspicion about what was going on and why there needed to be a separate meeting. And believe me, we were pulled, I know I was pulled to a side, I feel Jimmy probably was too, to talk to about what's going on and why was there need to have these meetings. So, but it was a great networking time. Like Sporty, I was fortunate to have, you've heard me talk about my two mentors, Jerry Barshop and Frank Poe, and they were intentional in recruiting me to be a part of the convention industry, because I was working at City Hall in special events office and saw a job advertised and said, well, you know, I can do this, I can do that, I can learn that. And I went over, and at the time, people at City Hall said, oh my gosh, if you go to this center, your career is over. People go there to die, you know, you will never get back to City Hall. People never come back from over there, you know. And so I said, well, it looks interesting. And so I didn't know much about it, but I went in and interviewed with Frank and Jerry and Jack Beckman, remember? And so they had a job at Union Arena and a job at the convention center. And they said, well, you're the only one with any experience, so you can choose. And I went into the convention center with Frank, and both of them just supported the entire time. After a few years, I determined that I really wanted this to be my career. So I just reached out and said, you know, I want to move up, and eventually I want to have your job, and I want to be, you know, and what do I need to do to get there? And again, just being blessed by them. Jerry, I think it's Jerry who started in housekeeping and worked up to be the director of the department that Mina finally headed. And then Frank Poe started, I believe, as a parking attendant and worked to be the general manager. Jerry retired after 40 years. So opened a lot of doors for me, and making sure I got involved with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I was the first person of color in the management in the office. And so there were clients who didn't really want to work with me and felt comfortable saying that to them, but not to me. And they stood their ground that Carol's your event manager, Carol's handling this. And when the CVB was going on those fam trips down to wherever, Carol went along to represent the convention center. And so they just stood their ground and trained me in anything I said I wanted to do. Like Mina, raised my hand, not getting more money, didn't get a title change. But one of the things I know I wanted to learn was budgeting. So Jerry said, and Frank said, well, you know, we have a brand new convention center expansion that we're doing, and there's an $8 million budget for FF&E. You handle it. And I said, oh, yeah, work with City Hall and handle it. And that's how I learned the whole budgeting process. I wanted to learn construction, and we had the older convention center that they were going to convert to a museum and art for the Black Academy of Arts and Letters. They needed a project manager. Carol, you got it. You want to learn construction? Go do it. And you know, like Sporty said, people who allowed you to fail and not let it be a career-ending failure. And I'll share a story, you know, that I don't like to tell, but I'll tell you because I wanted to learn so much, and they gave me opportunity. So I wanted to learn construction, and there was a meeting of the architects and the folks who were planning the expansion of the convention center. And Jerry said, well, Carol, do you want to go along with me? It's a 6:30 breakfast. I said, sure. So I had worked all day. I had worked concerts at night, didn't get home till after midnight, had to be up with my kids, you know, every next morning. So get there for a 6:30 breakfast. Nobody in the room looked like me, either female or a person of color. It was hot, I was tired, and I fell asleep in the meeting. So Jerry had to hunch me to wake me up. So I excused myself and went back to the building. And when he came back, I said, just tell me I didn't snore, you know. So, but you know, he invited me back. I went back to the next meeting, and you know, it became the joke that if the meeting got slow, Carol would fall asleep. So you got to keep it going. And you know, it's important for people to allow you to fail when you're trying to move up, and not let it be a career-ending failure, and hold it to a standard that's higher than everybody else. And that's what I appreciate about, you know, beginning my career there, is that they allowed me to fail, allowed me to grow, and gave me opportunities to grow. And it was Jerry who said in IAVM, and Frank, when IAVM had their first Ogilvy, you know, I was in the first class. We were all there in that first class, you know, because Carol, you need to do this. When they opened up IAVM for our level of membership, it was Frank and Jerry that said, you need to do this. And all along the way, they opened doors and pushed me and guided me. And I just appreciate that.
Yeah, you know, it was really, you know, it's really interesting. Carol years ago told me a story that stuck with me forever. And maybe it's part of the reason I've gotten so passionate about this work. But she was at an IAVM meeting. I think it was like a big luncheon. And she was standing there kind of like looking around like she was looking for somebody. And somebody came up and tapped her on the shoulder and was like, oh, we need some more silverware over here on this table. Like, here's this, you know, with a few, at that time, people of color in the room, and oh, it must not be a member, it must be like the server. And Sporty told me a similar story that I thought was interesting. So here's like the head guy of the Coliseum, right? And he'd be, you know, walking the concourse, you know, doing what an executive does, making sure everything's going well. And he kept, because he's tall, maybe black too, people were assuming he was security. And they'd be like, oh, we need some security. Be like, I'll go find you some security. And, you know, I know a number of you have shared stories about just the stereotypes and sort of biases that you experienced. Jimmy, you and I didn't really get a chance to talk prior to this, but I know that you've got stories to share as well.
Yeah, I relate to every one of them that's been told. As Sporty can tell you that, you know, a big black man in the room, security or something of that nature. And I had similar experiences that Carol mentioned, to where um, they're not quite sure if I'm really the person that's supposed to be doing this. You know, where's the real guy? You know, and you have to say, well, I am the real guy. And fortunately enough, I had people, mentors, very similar situations to uh, everyone who spoke. For me, it was a guy named David Dewall who had gave me an opportunity and allowed me to make mistakes and learn. And that really is what it's all about: is to have someone that is willing to take a chance on you and give you an opportunity. Now, it's up to you to perform and to learn and to you know, continue. But it's so many times that we do not get the opportunity to fail, you know, and everybody does. But you know, one time and then that's it. Oh, you're not cut out for this. But I think that as far as I know, to everybody that's on this panel has a similar experience in this industry, and there's unfortunately numerous stories about biases and issues, and we've tried to all deal with them with professionalism and grace, and you know, try not to get angry, at least not in public. You know, fortunately for me, I had an office where I could go and stomp around a little bit, but but you know, you just have to you know, carry on and know that you know you are worthy and you can you know, do what you need to do.
So I'm going to throw a question out. Just you, anybody can answer it, or all of you, however you want to. But could you talk a little bit about how you really learned, how you learned about IAVM, but more importantly, you know, how did you get involved? I mean, you all have served in very prominent roles in the association at times where, you know, we weren't really intentionally thinking about, oh, you know, we need diverse leadership, we need diverse committees, and yet you all found very prominent positions in the association. Could you talk about that and kind of the process used for kind of breaking down the barriers that were in place at the time? Just
the boss that I talked about in San Antonio, who thought that I wasn't suited for the job, was the same one who brought me along. And we didn't have the budget for me to go to the annual conferences, but he had me join IAVM and then accompany him and our assistant director to the regional conferences. And so I learned that way, you know, about the industry, and was able to follow along. And each year I learned a little bit more. And then once I became a director, because at that time I was in the general manager position, but once I became a director, then I was able to join, you know, be able to attend the annual conferences. And I think that's at the time that I already knew about Carol, but I hadn't met her. But then I met her once I was able to go to the annual conferences. So, but I'd heard a lot about her, so I can't say enough about that.
For me, it was you know, as I mentioned, David DeWall, God rest his soul, a great guy who saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself, and I'm grateful for that. But he really took an interest in teaching me about the industry, which I thought was really neat. And then, like Mina was saying, I meet people like Sporty and Carol, and especially Carol. Um, Carol would say things like, "Okay, next you're going to do this," and I go, "Oh, okay." And you get that done, and she said, "Okay, now you need to work on this," and she really motivated me. And I remember when she became back then president of IAVM, and at one of the receptions somewhere, she tugs on my coattail and she says to me, "Hey, you're going to be next." And I go, "Next what?" You know, she said, "You'll be the next person." I said, "Oh, you got to be kidding. I could never do that." And it was with her coaching and her uh, uh, mentoring that it happened, you know. And one of my other all time favorite stories has to do with the headquarters in Coppell. I mean, Carol, uh, I think she had that wired from the beginning. I mean, nobody thought that it could ever happen except her, and it did.
Well, there was a big group. You have to tell you those who you hear this common theme of people who mentored us, who paid it forward, who invested in us. And you know, Jerry Barshoff was a past president then of IBM, and he was one who pushed me and involved me in events and showed me about next steps. But it really is a lot about paying it forward and reaching out to people who we identified in our own staffs and getting them involved in IAVM, showing them the importance of IAVM and how to be active. You know, a lot of us were in District 6 at the time, Region 6, and there were so many events like the support staff seminar that was new. Before VMS, before Ogilvy, you know, you had programs like that that we were able to get together with lower level, our counterparts, and learn about the industry. And it's people who in leadership who identified us as up and comers and who they felt they would invest in. And I think it's important that we do sort of similar in terms of paying it forward in mentoring folks, because it is identifying people to say, this is what IAVM is, why it's important, and why you should commit your time and effort. And I think more of that needs to be done as well.
Hey, Robyn, if I could just for a moment, you know, and I know people look at us, and Carol told a great story, and I have one from that same Montreal trip that I took. I went with the assistant city manager and my boss, Andy Greenwell, who I mentioned, and that was before ticketing went electronic. And so we're flying from Norfolk to Montreal, and we get to New York, and I get off the plane and I'm walking down the baggage claim, and they say, where are you going? I said, I'm going to get my bag. So I was too dumb to even know that you could check your baggage all the way through to your final destination. But just little stuff like that. I know we have some young industry professionals on the, you know, on our panel, on the Zoom today. And I just want you guys to know we're all human. We've all screwed up. But, you know, Andy took me, that was literally my first year that I was in the business. And he took me on an international trip with him. And you guys know Andy. I mean, we're standing out in front of the hotel and he's telling these ladies, I finished second in the Heisman voting that year. And like, who knows who finished second in the Heisman voting, right? But only Andy Greenwell could be the kind of character that he was. But he believed in me. Steve Camp was a great mentor. I went to work for Steve, and you guys know Steve and how influential he's been in the business. But it all goes back to, you know, wanting to be involved. This, you know, there's a difference between a job and a career. And you can find jobs pretty easily, but if you want to make this a career, you need to be involved and learn as much as you can about this business. Serving on committees, I always volunteered to be on committees. Quite selfishly, I was looking at that as an opportunity to travel to Venue Connect every year, because I say, you know, I got an arenas committee meeting. I need to go to Miami for the committee meeting.
Yeah.
But I encourage you, even, you know, sign up for these committees, and when we get back to normal, if you don't have the travel budget, find a way to get to Venue Connect so you connect with your colleagues. Stay at the Hampton Inn out by the airport instead of the expensive hotel near the convention center. But find a way, you know, take a Greyhound bus or whatever you have to do for young people to get there so you can get some face time with industry professionals and move up.
And now there's scholarships through the foundation.
Amen.
Yeah, plenty of scholarships, I think. You know, it's one of the things. It's been really interesting to kind of pick out the common themes as I had chances to talk to you all, and not only have you had bosses who, with intent, helped you move forward, but there were bosses that realized that everybody makes mistakes, and if you make a mistake, it's not like, oh, you're not competent. You know, it's like Carol falling asleep at the meeting. That was not a deal killer for her. And Sporty has a hysterical story about window replacements that you can tell very quickly because it's funny.
Yeah, so I'm 24, 25 years old, and now I have the job as the assistant director. I'm thinking I'm really smart. I'm the junior executive, and I have an engineer. If any of you have ever seen the Hampton Coliseum, it looks like a spaceship. It has 48 windows that encircle the building, and these are huge windows. And so this engineer brings me a requisition to sign, and I see it down at the bottom, I think it was $1,900. So I think I'm signing a requisition to replace one of those windows, and I'm actually signing a requisition to replace all 48 of those windows. Needless to say, there was not money. Carol, you mentioned budget. There was not money in the budget to replace all of those windows, but Andy was able to go to city council and say, hey, you know, it is a a threat to us. If one of these windows were to fall, we get sued and it'd cost us a lot more money. But just, I should have been fired literally that day. I should not be sitting here right now for not reading something. I always stress that with young people: read contracts, read things carefully.
Okay, I'm gonna go throw out some of the questions that have shown up in the Q&A, and Joyce Leviston put this one out to you all. And she says, how do you suggest IAVM can be intentional in bringing more people of color into our membership and the industry? And would a true partnership with a historically Black college or university be an opportunity that maybe we've overlooked? So I'm going to throw that out to the panel.
I put that as an answer to one of the questions that you sent. And I think that internships would be wonderful. Bringing, like Sporty had said, that he had an internship. I wasn't aware that there was one even available in that way, but to go to the historically Black colleges and not just going to all of the colleges, because there are different people who would be interested in it, but offering that internship where they not only get credit for it, but then if there's a job available, to be able to then hire them if they've done a job or shown that they have the right attitude, or that they have the passion for that job. So and I don't know if that exists anywhere else, but I've not heard of it.
One of the things that I've thought about is that, all of us that have been involved in the association for many years, um, I think just by virtue of this program and some other things that have happened, I think the association has been proactive in trying to attain the goal of diversity. And it's a common issue is that the pool of people that are available to um, fill positions or even know this about this industry is somewhat limited. So when you look at how do you get people interested into doing what we do, and Sporty so eloquently stated it, it's more than a job. It really is a progressive career, and there's many elements to it. So I think one of the I like the idea, and I think it would be good if we could partner with some universities. I know there are some universities that have facility management programs, and they put out quite a few people, and I think people benefit from that greatly. But I think what we should look at is how to figure out how we can make the pie bigger. I think that the association again is only doing what it can with what it has. So we need to develop more people, and the people that are new in the industry, try to keep them engaged. And it was also stated, I think, one of the things that I've learned in my journey is that, like Sporty and others, is that I always wanted to know something about whatever was going on. I wanted to learn something about uh, what I was doing and what other people were doing, and I think that was part of the key for me in learning and developing relationships. But I do think that we have uh, to figure out how to get more people, more people of color, more women involved in what we do.
Carol, we had a really good talk on this subject. Do you want to share what you were telling me?
About getting more people involved.
Well, you were talking
Yeah.
about, we were talking about kind of getting
Oh,
more people of color
yeah.
into.
Yeah. And I was talking about how we need to, as we travel around and interact with people, be looking for people to get involved in the industry. And just recall and thinking not only here in San Diego, but prior to San Diego, in Denver, there was a man, he was a person of color, but he was working for the city doing project management. And I said, you should be involved in our industry. So I was able to steal him from them. So y'all know Joe Pashute. He came in, he had been on the city side. The same thing when I came to San Diego, there was a young man, talented young man who was working for the city manager, managing projects, and reached out to him, and he hired him at the convention center, Rudy Johnson. And as I've traveled around and I've seen different people in different industries, I talk about our industry, and especially people of color, but just across the board about our industry and what it is, because people don't understand what our industry is, and because we're so diverse in our properties. And so it's important, I think, as we really look to hire beyond just, as we talked about, Robyn, beyond the job description. And Sporty talked about not having any experience, but what he saw in you, he knew that you would make a great facility manager and leader. And so you can see the qualities that a person has. You can teach a lot of things you can teach. Looking at the job description, there's so much we have now in our job descriptions that really are hurdles for people, but really doesn't need to be there. You know, a lot of things you can learn once you get the job if you're going to get people in. We can create entry-level positions in our organizations where you can come and get into the job without any experience. And that allows you to reach out and bring people in. Like Sporty said, he was the assistant to the director and they froze something else. So there are a lot of things that we can do now at the level that we're in. And I think the people who are coming to IAVM's leadership conferences, the Venue Connect, that's the kind of mechanism of things IAVM should be training our leaders on. How do you begin to hire beyond the job description? How do you begin to identify talented people of color to bring into the industry and teach managers and assistant managers and presidents and CEOs how to do that and what that looks like.
And if I may add something, when I first started, I was working with the Parks and Recreation Department, and I did special activities. So I came to the convention center and the theater with events, but I had no idea what the whole convention center and how it ran. I just knew that I did events there. And so I thought, oh, I can do this when I saw a job opening where it was for an event coordinator. And I was like, I could do this. I had no clue whatsoever when I went there. I didn't even know how to use the two-way radio. And, and so when I was hired for the job, I was like, okay, what do I do now? But, having others help me along and, where you talked about the mistakes and things like that, but being willing to learn what it was all about, I just dug into it. And like Sporty said, I was hooked once I figured out, what I was supposed to do. But I just being willing to learn more about it. So, but I had no idea, and so many people don't know what we do. And so, what is a convention? They don't come to a convention. The people who live there. So making people more aware helps too.
Robyn, if I might add, I would just say, for our colleagues out there, pick up the phone, call someone. We're not necessarily insulted when you call us and say, hey, I need some diversity on my staff. Help me find some people. This group that we talk about, we might not be meeting in the hotel rooms anymore, but it exists informally. I know a lot of African-American industry professionals, and that's the first thing I think about when somebody says, I got a job open. I'm like, who do I know that's a Black person that can fill this job? And so I think that's one thing I would mention. HBCUs, I mentioned to you yesterday, Robyn, if you have an HBCU in your community, just don't look at, well, they don't have a sports management program. Look, if you can get in front of business students, you'd be surprised how many
theater students, music students, art students.
Yeah, I mean, once you share, like Mina said, once you share our industry with them, it's like, wow, I never knew somebody actually ran the Performing Arts Center. I would love to do that, and they're going to be an accountant if we don't grab them, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of ways we can do better. Shout out to Larry Perkins too. I see Larry's on our, on our call today as well.
We're gonna push IAVM. We're gonna push IAVM to put together a session on hiring beyond the job descriptions, because too many of our job descriptions and the requirements are in and of themselves barriers. And when you're like, oh, I just am not getting the right applicants, it's very possible that it's what you're putting out there. And so we're hoping that maybe we can put Carol on the road.
Oh, look at you. If I could add also about HBCUs, about a successful program, before I got into this industry, back during the rise of the 70s, Ohio State, see my flag back here on that side, Ohio State created an Office of Minority Affairs with the ideas of getting more minorities into Ohio State, because there were very few on campus, and you're talking about late 60s, early 70s. And they wanted more in the graduate school. They put together a program to Graduate School Visitation Day, invited all the graduates of HBCUs to Ohio State campus. They paid the fee, and it was like the top 10 or 20 of each school to come and visit Ohio State and to look at Ohio State as a potential for graduate school. And that's how they were able to diversify their graduate school. And many of the people who came to graduate school are now there as professors, assistant professors, and have stayed there all those years. So it definitely is a program that works, because I saw it work there.
I'm gonna try and squeeze in at least one more question that came from our viewers. This is from Nima Kamala. Hope I'm saying your name right. She says, I am a Black female graduate student at NYU studying event management with aspirations of becoming a venue manager. Do you have any advice on how I can build a system of support around me as I start my career?
Get to the Barclays Center as fast as you can so you can sit down with Adina Erwin.
Oh, Adina Erwin, yeah. Barclays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that too.
That's good advice. But for people, for young folks in general, whether they're students or maybe they're still starting out, and maybe they haven't had an opportunity to travel places, and how can you expand your network that can help give you a lift up? Sometimes it's just knowing somebody can say, hey, I just heard about this job.
And also to just reach out. Now everything is so social, and everything is on the information's on the internet and IAVM Venue Connect. And if you see somebody, just go and introduce yourself, or call and introduce yourself and say, this is who I am, like the young lady did from New York. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. Any advice? Because that's exactly what I did to Frank and Jerry when I didn't know the business. And after I got in and got a little inkling of it, and I said, hey, I want to move up. What do I need to do? And they taught me. So just reach out to any of the membership, and there are a number who are everybody's very accessible.
And Ebony Wilson just put in a tip for her in the chat. So
one less, Francois LeBlanc is he's at the new building as well, where the New York Islanders are going to be playing. So he's up in the New York area as well, Nima.
Fantastic. Well, I know, quite frankly, I have so many great questions here that weren't able even to get to. And really with this panel, this session should have been at least 2 or 3 hours long, because it's such a brain trust. And so one of the things I'm going to try and do, because there's some real important questions that I think everyone would benefit from hearing from this panel. I'm going to get with RV and see if we can't, you know, kind of create maybe do an article where he can talk to our panelists and answer some of these questions, and we can put it in a newsletter or maybe FM magazine or something like that, because there's just some fabulous things that I know I want to hear more about, and I know many of you will too. So with that, I want to thank my panelists for the time they gave me in and amongst, you know, snow and ice and, you know, craziness that's going on around us, and helping me put this together. I also want to thank the Diversity and Inclusive Leadership Committee, who really fed me great questions. That's just a group of people who are literally moving the needle in diversity in the association.
Hey, Robyn. I just wanted to add to what Sporty said. I'd be willing. I don't know if you're going to have a list of email addresses or phone numbers, but I'm certainly willing to have mine on the list if anybody wants to reach out to me personally to talk about anything, whether it be mentoring or job situations. I'm available, so I'll put that out there.
And Robyn, can I
And
mention
Miss-
too that the official mentoring program, the next cycle starts in April, and there's an application on the website. So Nima and anyone else, if you want to have that experience of having veterans like these wonderful panelists work with you on your goals, just fill out that application, and we'll do our best to pair you with someone to help you achieve your goals and objectives in during the year.
That's great. Thanks for mentioning that, Gina. I also know that the Diversity Leadership Committee is also reviewing the mentoring application to make sure we can really, you know, come up with the best matches that we can for folks. So that's pretty exciting. So, oh, I hate to stop because there's just so much good stuff happening here, but
I still have a bunch of questions on here that you haven't asked yet.
I know. Well, you know, I was just like, that's great. That's why I'm going to try and get with RV and see if we can't interview you guys and get some written responses and publish it as an article, because there's too much good stuff to just, you know, to let
leave it in the bag, right?
Yeah, Robyn, if I could say one more thing, I know we should have had more time, but it's amazing the impact that, and I'm not saying this as bragging, but the impact that I've had on people that I didn't even realize I did. And, you know, I've had people come back to me and say, you know, thank you for sharing this with me, or thank you for giving me an opportunity. And it's made such a big difference in their careers. And it's like, wow, I didn't know I did that. But just being willing to help people and, you know, to share your experiences with them. So if there's an opportunity to do that, I'm open.
I think that's a really good point, Mina. Again, I want to thank you all for your time. My kind of closing comment is that it's very important for us to know that our Black members' history is our industry history, and it's also our association history. And it's really important that the more we know about it, the better job that we can be. I know as a white advocate, the more I know, the better I can be an advocate for others. And so thank you guys so much. And thank you for everybody that took the time and even staying over a little bit. I know people are busy, but and thanks to the IAVM Foundation for making these E3s possible. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Robyn.